Smoke, smoke, smoke that cigarette. Smoke it till you smoke yourself to death. Tell St. Peter at the pearly gate, he's just gonna have to wait, 'cause you gotta have another cigarette.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, as the case may be. This is a very special, case may be in your part of the world. This is a very special video blog to Endless Joe. He left a bulletin, which I got because he's on my friends list, with like 50 things you've done in your life. And I thought, well, I've done 100 things, so that kind of screws that out because, I'd have to like put them like all together. Pen in my hand, I have no idea why. And so I was thinking, maybe what I would do is I would just tell Joe and all of you an amusing, perhaps disturbing, perhaps story about myself when I was very young. Now, as most of you know, my father, if you don't know yet, I'll tell you again, my father was a truck driver. And he took what we like to call a busman's holiday, in that he drove for a living, but for 2 weeks out of every year, what we did was drive around the United States to see different places. We didn't get a chance to do that, and he really loved the road, and so he would do that. So it always entailed us going to my grandfather's house in Bradley, Arkansas. And on the way down, we would at times take side roads. And in fact, when I was very young, it seemed like most of it was side road. And when you're in kindergarten and the kindergarten teacher says, "What do you want to be, when you grow up?" Or, "What would you like to be?" A fireman or a policeman or, whatever, a teacher. Well, we would go every year down to Bradley, Arkansas, and we would go through these fields of cotton and corn and grain and all kinds of produce. And at that period of time, we're talking about probably the early 60s, maybe the late 60s. There were sheds in the middle of these fields with tin roofs that were rusted. And, I always remember, like it was yesterday, looking across these fields and seeing huge families, a mother on what would be a porch if there were wood enough to make a porch, rocking in a rocker that had seen better days, and the kids running around. And what I wanted to be, more than anything else in the world, was I wanted to be a black kid. I wanted to live in a sharecropper's shack in the middle of a cotton field. It seems so simple. It was so far removed from the life that I knew, and I would go by, glassy-eyed, staring out the window with temperatures in the 90s and no air conditioner. There were no air conditioners at that time. In fact, I remember we got our first air conditioner was a metal box that hung on the front window of the car. And you would go into a gas station and you would buy a block of ice, or you would buy a bag of ice, and you would put inside this thing. And it had a fan in the front that when you drove, it would spin the fan and create a vortex, which would blow the air across the ice and into the car, and that's how you cooled the car. And then, farther on down the road, you would stop at another gas station to get directions, or to get something cold to drink, and that was usually a little tiny bottle of pop, and another bag of ice to keep the car cool. But the thing that I remember the most was that You know, I wanted to be buckwheat. I wanted to be cotton. I wanted to be a little black kid living in a sharecropper's farm in a little tiny hut with a tin roof with holes in it that rain would drip through, and having to put pots around and in order to catch the water and to stay dry and everything that entailed, you know. To play mumbly peg and marbles and to stick fight. And that's what I wanted to be when I was young. So now here I am, 49 years old, and every summer I try to achieve that for myself. I shower way too often, I don't use any conditioner, and I end up with this mop on top of my head. I tan well, and before the summer's end, I get as close as I can to being that little black kid. Skin as dark as can be, with a twist. Because I always had that little white butt. I remember going down to the Gulf of Mexico, and I don't know how long we stayed there, but I got as dark as anybody else that was there. And I was only about 7 or 8 years old, but I was so dark. And my mother has had movies of me, you know, after I had removed my swim trunks, going from one room to another in the house. And it is so funny to see this very, very deep golden brown child with this Snow White behind, running from one room to the other, trying not to get caught by the camera. So, you know, it's funny. I grew up with very liberal parents, and parents who didn't consider themselves prejudiced in any way. Now, I say they didn't consider themselves that because there were certainly prejudices there that they didn't recognize, and still are today. My mother's 88, 89 years old, and she still has prejudices that she doesn't even understand that she has the prejudice. But as a child, and growing up, I never really saw a difference, except that, well, I guess I did see a difference, but it wasn't a bad thing to me. In fact, I had this want to experience what life was like for somebody that was so much the same and so different at the same time, with a different lifestyle and a different, you know, education, and with just everything that came with that. And I look back to myself. I look back myself today, and I have to kind of laugh that all I wanted, what would have made my world complete, would have been if the Maker just bam, hit me with a lightning bolt and turned me into a little black kid living in a sharecropper's hut in the middle of a field somewhere down south. I'm amused by the innocence of it all. So there's a story for you, Joe. Instead of 50 things that I've done in my life, and there are at least 50, instead of trying to impress you with who I am and where I came from, I thought I would share that story with you. Because I think that at the very center of my being, at times, that child looking out the station wagon window still exists. Until next time, this is Zen Archer saying be well.
Smoke, smoke, smoke that cigarette. Smoke it till you smoke yourself to death. Tell St. Peter at the pearly gate, you just gonna have to wait, 'cause you got